Boyfriend demanded 50% of my rental income after discovering I own the entire building we live in. All right, so here's my situation. I've, 26F, been dating Mark, 25M, for about 6 months now, and everything seemed to be going fine. In fact, about 3 months ago, he moved in with me. I was excited, you know. We were still getting to know each other, and living together seemed like a natural step. Plus, he had some issues with his last place, so I offered him to move in with me until he figured things out. I wasn't charging him any rent or asking him to help with bills, and it just felt good to help him out. But here's where things get tricky. I own the building we live in. It's a 2-story house, and technically, it's been in my family for a long time. My dad gifted it to me when I was 18. I know that sounds crazy, but it's not like we're super rich or anything. My dad bought it cheap from a distant relative, and he gave it to me because he thought it'd be a good investment for my future. I was super grateful, and I've always tried to be humble about it. I mean, it's not something I go around telling people, you know? It feels kind of weird to bring up in conversation like, hey, by the way, I own a house, so I don't. The house is basically like 2 apartments, one on the top floor, where I live, and one on the bottom floor, which I rent out. The tenant downstairs is super chill, and I charge her $500 a month, which is honestly pretty reasonable for the area. I'm not trying to make a ton of money off her or anything. I just want to cover expenses and keep things running smoothly. Now here's the thing. I never told Mark that I owned the building, it just never came up. I didn't think it mattered. And honestly, I didn't want to make things weird between us. I mean, we were still early in our relationship, and it didn't feel like something I needed to tell him right away. Plus, I've always been careful about not flaunting it, because I didn't want anyone to treat me differently because of it. So, fast forward to last Tuesday. The tenant downstairs knocks on my door and tells me her fridge isn't working. Mark's sitting on the couch in the living room, probably not paying much attention to what's going on. I go down to check it out with her, and yep, the fridge is definitely done for. She asks me what to do, and I tell her that she can go ahead and buy a new one, and I'll reimburse her for it. She's super appreciative, and we figure out the details. I go back upstairs, thinking it's all handled, and that's when Mark starts asking questions. He's like, "What was that about?" I tell him the fridge broke, and the tenant's getting a new one, and that I'll pay for it. Simple, right? Well, apparently not, because Mark just stares at me like I've grown a second head or something. "Why are you paying for her fridge?" he asks, sounding completely confused. Now at this point, I'm still not thinking much of it, so I casually say, "Because I'm her landlord. The fridge was there when she moved in, so it's my responsibility to replace it." And boom, that's when everything started spiraling. He looks at me, wide-eyed, like I just told him I was secretly an alien or something. He's like, "Wait, you're her landlord? You own this place?" I nod, feeling a little awkward but not thinking it's a big deal. "Yeah, I own the building. My dad gave it to me when I turned 18. And then, out of nowhere, Mark starts freaking out. He's all, "Why didn't you tell me? How could you keep something like that from me?" I try to calm him down and explain that it's not something I go around telling everyone, and I didn't think it was a huge deal. But he's not having it. He gets louder, saying, "I can't believe I'm living with someone who's a landlord. Do you know how much I hate landlords? You people just use others for money. You don't care about anyone but yourselves." I was completely blindsided. I mean, yeah, I get that some landlords are terrible, but I've always tried to be fair. I don't charge crazy rent, and I actually care about my tenants' well-being. But none of that seemed to matter to him. He kept going on about how I'm just like the rest of them, and how I should have told him from the start. I tried to apologize for not telling him sooner, but it didn't help. Mark then took it a step further, saying, "You should give me half of the rent you get from downstairs if you really care about me." What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him I wasn't going to do that, and that's when he really lost it. He yelled about how I'm just greedy, using people for money, and that he couldn't believe he was with someone who owned property. He even said I'd probably let people be homeless just to make a quick buck. It was honestly one of the most ridiculous things I'd ever heard. At this point, I didn't even know what to say. I tried to keep calm and told him I wasn't like that, but he wouldn't listen. He just kept yelling and accusing me of hiding things from him. The more I tried to explain, the angrier he got. It's like something in him just snapped, and nothing I said could fix it. He stormed out, slamming the door behind him, leaving me standing there in shock. I didn't know what to do. Was I really the bad guy here? All because I didn't tell him I owned the place? It wasn't like I was hiding it on purpose. I just didn't think it mattered yet, and now it's blown up into this massive issue. I tried texting him afterward to apologize again and explain that I never meant to hurt him by not telling him about the building, but he didn't respond. It's been a few days now, and I still haven't heard from him. I'm starting to wonder if I completely messed things up by not being upfront with him. But also, his reaction seemed pretty extreme, right? Like, yeah, I could have mentioned it sooner, but demanding half of the rent, that's just, I don't know. I'm honestly at a loss here, and now I'm just sitting here wondering if I'm really the one in the wrong, or if this was just never going to work from the start. So, was I really the a-hole for not telling him I own the building? Alright, so after everything went down with Mark freaking out about me owning the building, I thought maybe he'd cool off, you know? Like, take a few days, think about things, and maybe we could have a normal conversation. But, nah, that's not what happened at all. A couple of days after our argument, Mark comes back. He didn't text or call beforehand, just showed up like nothing was wrong. At first, I was kind of hopeful that he was ready to talk things out like an adult. But boy, was I wrong. The second he walked in, I could feel the tension in the air. He wasn't smiling, and he wasn't exactly calm. It was like he'd spent the last 2 days stewing in his anger, and now he was ready to unload on me again. He didn't even ask how I was or anything. He just stood there in the doorway, arms crossed, staring at me like I was the one who'd done something terrible. I tried to break the ice a little, being like, hey, I'm glad you're here. Can we talk about what happened? But before I could even finish my sentence, Mark cuts me off. I've been thinking about everything, he says, real cold, and I want half of the rent money from downstairs. I just stared at him for a second, not sure if he was serious or not. I mean, I knew he'd mentioned it when he was angry the other night, but I didn't actually think he was going to double down on that. But here he was, standing in front of me, demanding I give him half of the rent from a tenant who, by the way, had absolutely nothing to do with him. So I just said, what? You can't be serious. And he goes, why not? If we're in a relationship, everything should be 50-50ths, right? So why shouldn't I get half of what you make from renting out the apartment? If you really care about me, you'd share that with me. At this point, I could feel my blood starting to boil. Like, I get that we're in a relationship, but that doesn't mean he automatically gets to claim my income, especially from a property he didn't even know existed until a few days ago. It wasn't like we were married or had some kind of joint financial agreement. He was just my boyfriend, and we'd only been together for 6 months. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and said, Mark, you can't just demand money from me because we're dating. I've been fair to you. I haven't asked you to pay rent. I've split groceries with you, and I've let you live here without asking for anything extra. Why do you think you deserve half of the rent? That's when things took a turn. Mark, instead of answering me, starts going off on this weird rant about how landlords are the scum of the earth, how people like me don't care about anyone but ourselves, and how I was just using people for money. He went on and on about how he never thought he'd be with someone who owned property, because in his eyes, that made me a part of the problem. It was like he was completely forgetting the fact that I wasn't even charging him rent to live here. But somehow, in his mind, I was the villain. And now, on top of that, he wanted a cut of the rent, as if that would somehow make me a better person in his eyes. I just stood there, trying to process everything he was saying, and honestly, it was hard to keep up because he was jumping from one point to another, barely giving me a chance to respond. Every time I tried to explain my side, he'd interrupt, accusing me of being selfish and greedy. It was like talking to a brick wall. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to raise my voice a bit to get him to stop. Mark, I said, this isn't about rent money. This is about trust. You're acting like I kept this huge secret from you, but I never lied to you. I didn't think it was relevant to our relationship yet, and honestly, I didn't think you'd react like this, but now you're turning it into something ugly. He just shook his head, like he couldn't believe what I was saying. You don't get it, he snapped. If you really cared about me, you'd share everything with me. And if you won't, then maybe I need to rethink this whole relationship. That hit me hard. Like, really? This was what our relationship had come down to? Money? I wasn't expecting that at all. It was like the person I'd been dating for the past 6 months had completely changed overnight, and I didn't even recognize him anymore. I tried one last time to reason with him. I told him that I wasn't going to give him half of the rent money, not because I didn't care about him, but because it was unreasonable. I said we could figure out a way to work through this, but only if he could meet me halfway and stop with the demands. But he just stared at me, cold and distant, and said, if you won't share, then I guess we're done. My heart sank. I couldn't believe it had come to this. I told him that if that's how he felt, maybe it was better if he left. I wasn't going to be in a relationship where I was being manipulated over money. I didn't want to kick him out, but he left me no choice. Mark didn't say anything after that. He just turned around, grabbed his jacket, and walked out the door. No goodbye, no explanation, nothing. Just like that, he was gone. I sat down on the couch, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. How did things get so bad so quickly? One minute we were fine, and the next he was demanding money from me like I owed him something. I didn't know what to do next. Should I try to talk to him again? Should I just let it go and move on? Part of me wanted to reach out and see if we could fix things, but the other part of me knew that if he was willing to throw everything away over this, maybe it wasn't worth saving. I guess I never expected things to end this way, and I didn't know what to do next. But for now, I just needed some space to think. So after Mark stormed out that day, I honestly didn't know what to do next. I mean, part of me was still in shock over the whole thing. Like, how did we go from living together all chill to him demanding half my rent money and leaving? It just felt surreal. I wasn't really sure if we were officially broken up or if he'd come back and we'd talk things out. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that things had already crossed a line I couldn't ignore. A few days passed, and I hadn't heard from him at all. No texts, no calls. He was totally radio silent, and honestly, I was kind of relieved. I needed some space to figure out what the hell just happened and how I felt about everything. But then, out of nowhere, he started texting me again, and not with any apology or explanation. Instead, he sent me this long ranting message saying that I was the one who needed to apologize to him. He said I'd betrayed him by not being upfront about the building, and that I was selfish for not wanting to share my money with him. He even accused me of using him, which made zero sense because I never asked him for anything. Like, dude, you've been living here rent-free and you think I'm the one using you? I didn't even know how to respond at first. The whole thing just felt off. His messages weren't about working things out or trying to understand each other. It was just more of the same anger and accusations. He kept throwing around phrases like, if you really loved me, you'd do this, and you're acting like a typical greedy landlord, and it was honestly exhausting. I started to feel like this was less about me and more about his issues with landlords in general. Like, he wasn't even seeing me as his girlfriend anymore, just some symbol for everything he hated. But then things took a turn that really freaked me out. Mark started hinting that if I didn't give him what he wanted, he'd start telling people about me. He said he'd make sure all our mutual friends knew that I was just like all the other landlords who screw people over, and that I was hiding things from him. He made it sound like he was going to drag my name through the mud to anyone who'd listen. And for what? Because I didn't give him rent money he wasn't entitled to in the first place? That's when I realized this wasn't just some stupid argument about money anymore. This was turning into manipulation and threats, and I wasn't going to stand for that. I knew I needed to do something to protect myself, so I called my dad. I explained everything to him, how Mark had been acting, the crazy demands for money, and now the threats to ruin my reputation. My dad was pissed, but in that calm, controlled way that dads get when they're ready to handle business. He told me he'd come over and sit in his car outside, just in case things got worse. I didn't think Mark would actually show up, but I wanted to be prepared just in case. Later that night, while I was watching TV and trying to distract myself, I heard a knock on the door. I peeked through the peephole, and sure enough, it was Mark. My heart started racing because I had no idea what kind of mood he was in or what he was going to say. But I wasn't going to hide from him, so I opened the door and let him in. The tension was thick as soon as he walked in. He didn't say anything right away, just stood there with this weird look on his face. I offered him to sit down, and he finally broke the silence. So, have you thought about what I said? His voice was low, like he was trying to stay calm, but could explode at any second. I didn't beat around the bush. Yeah, I have. And I'm not giving you half of the rent money, Mark. That's not happening. He looked at me like I'd slapped him. Seriously? After everything we've been through, you're still going to be selfish like this? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mark, I'm not being selfish. I've been more than fair to you. You've been living here for free. I haven't asked you to pay rent or bills, and now you're acting like I owe you something. But I don't. You're not entitled to my income just because we're in a relationship. That's when he really lost it. He stood up, pacing around the room, raising his voice. I can't believe this. I can't believe I've been with someone this greedy. You don't even care about us, do you? You just care about your damn money. I tried to stay calm, but my patience was wearing thin. Mark, this isn't about money. This is about trust and respect. You're making this all about you, and I don't get it. Why is this such a big deal to you? He stopped pacing and turned to me, his face red with anger. Because I thought we were a team. I thought you cared about me enough to share everything, but clearly I was wrong. At this point, I was done trying to reason with him. It was clear he wasn't going to listen, no matter what I said. So I told him flat out, if you're going to keep demanding money from me and threatening to ruin my reputation, then this isn't going to work. I'm not going to be in a relationship where I'm manipulated like this. Mark didn't take that well. He started yelling, calling me names, saying that I was throwing everything away over a little bit of money. It was like he couldn't see the bigger picture. This wasn't about the rent anymore, it was about the way he was treating me. But he wasn't listening. He was too wrapped up in his anger and his weird sense of entitlement to even hear what I was saying. That's when I texted my dad, letting him know Mark was here, and things were getting heated. My dad texted back, saying he was outside and ready if I needed him. Mark kept ranting for a few more minutes, but then, out of nowhere, he just stopped. He looked at me, shook his head, and said, "I can't believe I wasted my time with you." He stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. I stood there for a minute, trying to process what just happened. I didn't feel relief right away, just kind of numb. I knew things were over, but it still didn't feel real. I walked over to the window and saw my dad's car parked outside. I waved to let him know I was okay, and he texted me to check in. I told him I was fine, but I wasn't sure if I really was. Mark was gone, and I knew there was no going back after this. But even though I felt weirdly empty in that moment, I also knew deep down that I'd done the right thing. After Mark stormed out that night, I was left sitting there on the couch, feeling like my brain was doing cartwheels. You know that feeling when something major just happened, but you're still trying to wrap your head around it? That's where I was. It wasn't just that Mark had left, it was everything leading up to it. I mean, how did it go from us being fine to him demanding money and then leaving like it was nothing? I spent the next couple of days just trying to process everything. I didn't hear from him, and honestly, I didn't try to reach out either. It felt like this massive weight had been lifted, but at the same time, I was still confused. How could someone I thought I knew so well flip like that? Part of me kept going back over our relationship, wondering if there were signs I missed or if this whole landlord thing really just pushed him over the edge. But no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't make sense of his reaction. Anyway, a few days later, Mark texts me, but it wasn't an apology or an attempt to talk things out like I had half hoped. Nope, he was just being, well, petty. He starts off with this super cold text, something like, "Let me know when I can come pick up my stuff." No, "Hey, how are you?" Or "Can we talk?" Just straight to the point. Honestly, I didn't know how to feel about it, so I text back, keeping it just as short. "Come by whenever you're free. I'll leave your things in a box by the door." I wasn't trying to be rude, but I also didn't want to deal with a face-to-face argument if he was still in that angry mode. Mark showed up a couple of hours later. I had packed all his stuff neatly in a box like I said I would, and I left it by the front door. I stayed inside, sitting on the couch pretending to watch TV, but my heart was racing. I wasn't sure if he'd knock, try to talk, or just take his things and leave. Sure enough, I hear a knock. It wasn't loud or anything, just kind of there, like he was checking to see if I'd come to the door. I debated for a second. Do I open it? Do I ignore it? But eventually I got up and opened it. I didn't want things to end without at least some closure. There he was, standing there with his hands in his pockets, looking way more calm than the last time I saw him. For a second, I thought maybe he was going to apologize, or at least explain why he acted the way he did. But instead, he just glanced at the box and said, "That's it?" I nodded. "Yeah, that's everything." He didn't say anything for a few seconds, just kind of stared at the ground. Then he looked up and said, "You know, I thought we had something good, but clearly you care more about money than us." That hit me hard. It was like he didn't even understand the real issue here. I wasn't the one obsessed with money. He was the one who made this whole thing about money in the first place. But I was tired of fighting. I didn't want to argue anymore. "Mark, this was never about money," I said, trying to stay calm. "This was about trust and how you handled the situation. I never asked you for rent. I never asked you to pay for anything, but you turned this into something ugly. I didn't hide owning the building to hurt you. I just didn't think it mattered. But the way you reacted, it's like you didn't even care about me, just what I could give you." He scoffed like I had said something ridiculous. "You're still not getting it, are you? I don't care about the money. I care about being with someone who's open and honest. You hid something huge from me, and now you're acting like I'm the bad guy for wanting what's fair." I took a deep breath, realizing that no matter what I said, he wasn't going to get it. It was like we were speaking two different languages. "Mark, we clearly see things differently. I'm sorry you feel like I wasn't honest, but I've already apologized for not telling you sooner. That's all I can do. If you're still mad, then maybe this isn't going to work out." He looked at me for a long time, like he was waiting for me to change my mind or say something different. But I didn't. I couldn't. This whole situation had shown me a side of him that I didn't like, and I wasn't about to cave just to keep the peace. Finally, he picked up the box and said, "I guess this is it then." I nodded. "Yeah, I guess so." He turned to leave, but then he stopped and looked back at me one last time. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice low but serious. "You're going to regret this." I didn't say anything. I just stood there as he walked away, carrying his stuff with him. And when he was gone, I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling a mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, maybe a little anger too. But mostly, I felt like I had done the right thing, even if it didn't feel great in the moment. After he left, I sat down and took a deep breath. This whole situation had been a mess, but at least it was over. I wasn't sure what the next step was, but I knew that staying in a relationship where I was constantly questioned and made to feel guilty for something that wasn't even wrong wasn't healthy. Mark had made his choice, and I'd made mine. It was time to move on, even if it was going to be hard. I wasn't going to let someone make me feel like I owed them something just because we were dating. Relationships should be about trust and respect, not money or manipulation. And maybe I had learned that the hard way, but at least now I knew where I stood. I spent the rest of the evening just trying to relax, letting everything sink in. I didn't know what the future would hold, but I was ready to move forward, without the drama, without the manipulation. It was time to focus on myself and let go of the negativity that had been weighing me down. After Mark left with his box of stuff, I figured that was it. You know, we'd both move on, and I could finally just get some peace without dealing with his constant drama about the rent or the house or whatever else he wanted to argue about. But of course, it didn't end as cleanly as I thought it would. A few days went by, and honestly, I started to feel a little better. It was weird at first, not having him around, but there was also a sense of relief. Like I wasn't walking on eggshells in my own house anymore. I could just breathe. I threw myself into work and spent time with friends, trying to distract myself and not think about everything that went down. I figured the whole situation with Mark would just fade away, but nope, Mark wasn't about to let that happen. It started small. He'd text me random stuff like, "I forgot my charger at your place," or, "Can you send me that hoodie I left in the closet?" I'd respond, but only to keep things civil, like, "Sure, I'll leave it by the door." I wasn't trying to get into any more arguments, but every time we texted, he'd slip in these passive-aggressive comments. Stuff like, "Guess it's nice being a landlord and having everything taken care of," or, "Must be great living rent-free in your own building." I tried to ignore it, not taking the bait, but it was getting frustrating. Like, dude, we broke up. Can we just leave it at that? But then things escalated. One day, I get a message from a mutual friend. Let's call her Jen. Jen tells me that Mark's been talking about me behind my back. He's been telling people I'm this greedy landlord who kicked him out because I didn't want to share my rent money with him. I was floored. Like, what? That's not even remotely what happened. But according to Jen, he was going around spinning this story like I was some kind of heartless, money-hungry monster, and I couldn't believe it. I wasn't sure how to handle it. Do I confront him? Do I let it go? I didn't want to feed into his drama, but at the same time, I didn't want people thinking I was the bad guy here. I talked to my close friends, and they reassured me that anyone who knew me wouldn't believe Mark's nonsense. Still, it bothered me. It was like he couldn't just leave it alone and move on. He had to make it into this big thing. Eventually, I decided to reach out to him, just to clear the air and hopefully put an end to the gossip. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted him to stop talking about me like I was the villain. So, I texted him something simple like, "Hey, can we talk? I've heard some things and I'd like to clear things up." He responded almost immediately, which surprised me. "What's there to clear up?" he wrote. "Everything I've said is true. You didn't want to share with me, so now everyone knows the real you." I took a deep breath, trying not to get worked up. "Mark, that's not how things went down, and you know it. We broke up because you made unreasonable demands, not because I'm greedy. Can we just agree to stop talking about each other and move on?" His next message was full of sarcasm. "Oh, right. I'm the unreasonable one for wanting what's fair. You're the one who hid things from me, remember?" At that point, I realized he wasn't going to back down. No matter what I said, he was determined to paint himself as the victim and me as the villain. I wasn't going to convince him otherwise, so I decided it was better to just leave it alone. I texted back, "I'm done with this, Mark. I wish you the best, but I'm not going to engage in this anymore." And that was that. I blocked his number after that conversation, not because I wanted to cut him off completely, but because I knew there was no point in continuing the back and forth. It wasn't healthy for either of us, and I didn't want to be sucked into any more drama. But the thing is, it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, I heard from a couple more people that Mark was still talking about me. He was telling anyone who would listen that I was some terrible person who led him on and used him. It hurt, honestly, because I didn't think things would end this way. We'd had good times together, and now all of that was erased, replaced by this bitter mess. One of my friends, let's call him Alex, finally stepped in. He'd known both of us during our relationship, and he wasn't having any of Mark's nonsense. Alex told me he confronted Mark at a party, telling him to knock it off and stop dragging my name through the mud. According to Alex, Mark didn't take it well, got defensive, and stormed out. But at least someone was standing up for me. After that, the rumors seemed to die down. I think most people just got tired of hearing Mark rant, and they could see through his version of events. I started to feel a little more at ease, like maybe this was finally behind me. In the end, the whole thing was exhausting. I had never expected a breakup to turn into such a mess, especially not over something as stupid as rent money. But at the same time, it was eye-opening. I realized that I had been in a relationship with someone who didn't respect me or my boundaries, and I was better off without him. Yeah, it hurt at first, and dealing with the aftermath was stressful, but I came out of it knowing my worth and what I wouldn't tolerate going forward. Looking back, I guess I'm glad things happened the way they did, even if it sucked at the time. It showed me that some people aren't who you think they are, and that's okay. You live, you learn, and you move on. And honestly, I'm just relieved it's all over. Mark's out of my life, the rumors have died down, and I'm finally feeling like I can breathe again. And next time, I'll be a lot more careful about who I let into my space, literally and figuratively. Update. So, after all the drama with Mark finally started to die down, I thought that would be the end of it. I was ready to just move on, focus on myself, and forget about everything. But of course, life had other plans. One day, out of nowhere, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it might be spam, but when I opened it, I realized it was Mark's mom. I hadn't spoken to her much during our relationship, so this was totally unexpected. Her message was super long, and honestly, I had to read it a couple of times to really understand what she was trying to say. Basically, she was asking me to give Mark another chance. She said he was going through a tough time, and that he wasn't himself when all the stuff went down between us. She went on about how he's been struggling with work, money, and some personal stuff, and how that probably contributed to him lashing out at me. She even threw in a line about how she thought we made a great couple, and it would be a shame to throw it all away over a misunderstanding. I was honestly shocked. I hadn't expected Mark to get his mom involved, but maybe he was more upset about our breakup than I realized. Still, I wasn't about to let that change anything. What happened between Mark and me wasn't just some misunderstanding like his mom was saying. It was about trust and how he treated me. So I took some time to think about how I wanted to respond. I didn't want to be rude, but I also didn't want to give her any hope that we could get back together. After a bit, I messaged her back and said something like, "I really appreciate your message, but I think Mark and I are better off apart. There's a lot that went wrong between us, and I don't think getting back together would fix any of that. I wish him the best, but I've moved on." I kept it respectful, but I made sure to be clear that I wasn't interested in rekindling anything with Mark. After I sent the message, I kind of expected her to push back, but surprisingly, she didn't. She just replied saying she understood and that she hoped we could both find happiness in our own ways. That was the end of that, and honestly, I was relieved it didn't turn into more drama. The whole situation with Mark and his mom reaching out made me realize even more that I made the right choice. If he couldn't handle things maturely and had to get his family involved, it just showed me that he wasn't ready for the kind of relationship I wanted. It was hard to end things, but at the end of the day, I was glad I stood my ground and didn't let him drag me into any more of his mess. Now, I'm just focused on myself and what's ahead. It feels good to finally put everything with Mark behind me for good. Brother kicked me out over sister-in-law's lies. Now they're homeless and want to move into my house. All right, I guess I need to get this off my chest. A few years ago, I was really struggling. I had just finished college, had a not-so-great job, and honestly, life wasn't looking too good for me. My older brother, Tom, who's 9 years older than me, offered me a place to stay with him and his wife, Karen. At the time, I was super grateful. I mean, who wouldn't be? Rent was ridiculously high, and I wasn't making enough to even consider living on my own. Tom had this nice house with a spare room, and he told me I could stay there as long as I needed until I got back on my feet. It felt like a lifeline. So I moved in with them. It wasn't a permanent solution, but I was trying to get myself together, you know? I didn't want to be a burden or anything, so I made sure I helped out around the house as much as possible. I did the cooking, cleaning, ran errands, all that stuff. I wasn't contributing much financially at first because I could barely afford my own groceries, but I pitched in whenever I could. Like if I had some extra cash, I'd buy groceries for the house or take care of the little things they needed. I thought it was going pretty well. At first, everything seemed fine. Karen was nice enough, and Tom and I have always been close, so it felt like I was in a safe place. Karen and I weren't best friends or anything, but I didn't think there was any problem between us. She never really said much, just kind of kept to herself, but I didn't take it personally. She was pregnant at the time, so I figured she just had her own stuff going on, but after about 6 months, things started getting weird. Like, subtle stuff at first. Karen would make these little comments like, "Oh, when the baby comes, we're gonna need a lot more space." Or, "I wonder if we should start thinking about how to turn the guest room into a nursery." You know, hints like that. I kinda got the vibe that she wanted me gone, but Tom kept reassuring me, saying, "Don't worry about it. You can stay as long as you need." I believed him because, well, he's my brother. Why would I think otherwise, right? Then the comments got less subtle. Karen started complaining more openly, saying things like, "It's going to be really hard having a newborn and a third person in the house." I wasn't trying to overstay my welcome, but at the same time, I didn't have anywhere else to go just yet. I had finally gotten a decent job by this point, but it wasn't like I had enough saved up to just pack my bags and leave right away. One day things really started to shift. I remember it clear as day. Karen was sitting in the living room, and I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner. Tom wasn't home yet, and Karen just starts talking to me out of nowhere. She tells me that she's uncomfortable with me living there, that it's affecting her peace of mind, and how she doesn't feel safe with some of the people I hang out with. I was like, "What people?" Because I barely went out, and when I did, it was usually with coworkers or old friends from college. Karen goes, I heard from Tom that some of your friends are involved in stuff like drugs, and I don't want that around my baby." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm not even close to anyone involved in that kind of crap, and I told her that. But she just shrugged like she knew something I didn't. I remember feeling like my stomach dropped because it was so out of left field, but I figured she was just stressed out with the pregnancy and all. I tried to brush it off, but things didn't stop there. After that conversation, Karen got colder. She'd give me these looks, like I was in her way, and barely spoke to me unless it was to drop more passive-aggressive hints about me leaving. I knew something was off, but I didn't want to believe that she'd straight up make things up about me. I mean, it's my brother's wife. What reason would she have to lie? Well, fast forward a couple of weeks, and Tom starts acting distant too. It's not like him, so I asked him one night if everything was okay, and he just said Karen's been really stressed lately. He didn't bring up anything specific, but the vibe was off. Like, it felt like he was hiding something, but I didn't push him on it. So when Karen started acting a bit more distant, I didn't think much of it. I figured she just needed space or was going through her own stuff. But then, she started making these comments. Little things that, in hindsight, were probably meant to push me out without actually saying it outright. Like, she'd mention how small the house felt all of a sudden, or how she needed more room for the baby's stuff. There was one time she even joked, "Maybe you'll be moving out before the baby comes, right?" And then laughed it off like it was no big deal. I remember laughing with her, but deep down I was like, wait, is she serious? It wasn't just the comments, though. She started avoiding me more. If I was in the living room, she'd go upstairs or into another room. I'd try to make conversation, ask her about the pregnancy, if she needed anything, and she'd just brush me off. I was starting to feel like a ghost in the house. The weird part was that Tom never seemed to notice. He was so wrapped up in the baby stuff, planning for the future, that he didn't see what was happening right in front of him. And then there was the day Karen dropped the bomb about me supposedly flirting with her. I still can't wrap my head around it. It was a regular Tuesday. Tom was at work and I had the day off, so I figured I'd do some cleaning around the house. Help out since I was staying there for free. Karen was sitting in the living room just scrolling through her phone, not really paying attention to anything. I was in the kitchen wiping down the counters when she suddenly called out, "Can I talk to you for a second?" I walked over thinking she needed help with something, but the look on her face was just weird. She didn't seem upset, but there was something off about her expression, like she was about to drop some serious news on me. "So, she started fiddling with her phone. "I've noticed that I don't know how to say this, but you've been acting kinda flirty with me." I literally froze. I didn't even know what to say at first because it was so out of left field. Like what? Me? Flirting? With her? I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Wait, what? Flirty? With you? That's crazy, Karen." But she wasn't laughing. She just stared at me, dead serious. "No, I'm not kidding. Tom mentioned it to me too. He said he noticed it a while back." That's when the pit in my stomach dropped. Tom noticed it? What the hell was she even talking about? I had never, and I mean never, thought of Karen that way. She was my brother's wife, for crying out loud. The idea of flirting with her was insane. Karen, I don't know what you're talking about, I said, trying to stay calm. I wouldn't. That's not. But she cut me off. Look, I'm just telling you what I feel. And honestly, it's making me uncomfortable. I don't think it's a good idea for you to be here anymore, especially with the baby coming. I felt like the room was spinning. I didn't know how to respond. How do you defend yourself against something that never even happened? I wanted to scream, but I just stood there, completely blindsided. Tom said that? I finally managed to ask. She nodded, but something about the way she did it felt off. Like she wasn't telling the whole story, but I didn't know what part of it was missing. The rest of that conversation is kind of a blur. Karen kept talking about how it's not personal and it's just for the safety of the family, but all I heard was that she wanted me gone. The whole flirting thing was complete BS, but I didn't know how to prove it. And the fact that she claimed Tom noticed it too? That hurt the most. My own brother thought I was hitting on his wife. It didn't make any sense. After that day, things got real tense in the house. Karen stopped talking to me altogether, and Tom acted like everything was fine, but I knew he knew something was up. I tried to talk to him about it one night, but he just brushed me off, saying, Karen's been really stressed with the pregnancy. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally? How could I not take it personally when his wife was accusing me of something so ridiculous? It got worse when Karen started telling Tom that I was involved with bad people. She told him that some of my friends were into drugs and that she didn't feel comfortable having me around the baby if I was bringing that kind of influence into their home. I barely even had friends over. I didn't have a social life because I was working and saving up to move out. But somehow, Karen had convinced Tom that I was hanging out with sketchy people. I don't know if Tom actually believed her, or if he just didn't want to deal with the drama, but he started acting weird around me too. He'd come home from work and barely say a word to me, like I wasn't even there. It was obvious Karen had gotten into his head, but every time I tried to bring it up, he'd shut me down. Just give Karen some space, he'd say. She's going through a lot right now. It didn't matter what I said. Karen had already made up her mind, and she was doing everything she could to push me out. And the worst part? She was using my brother to do it. It was like watching someone build a case against you for something you didn't even do, and you're just standing there, powerless to stop it. By this point, I knew I couldn't stay there much longer. I was already looking for apartments, but with the rent prices, it wasn't easy. I didn't have a lot of options, and the last thing I wanted was to end up on the streets. I was trying so hard to be patient, to not rock the boat, but deep down I knew it was only a matter of time before Karen made her final move. And when she did, I wasn't sure if Tom would have my back or if he'd side with her. So it finally happened. I knew it was coming, but when it did, it still hit me like a ton of bricks. Karen had been building up to this for weeks, and I guess I was just holding on to hope that Tom would step in and tell her to cut the crap. But yeah, that didn't happen. I had just gotten home from work, another long day at my new job, and all I wanted to do was relax for a bit. I walked in the door and everything seemed quiet. Too quiet, actually. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like something's off, but you can't put your finger on it right away. I headed towards my room, and that's when I saw it. All my stuff. My clothes, books, random belongings, packed up in boxes and bags, just sitting there in the hallway like trash waiting to be taken out. I stopped in my tracks. My heart started racing, and for a second I thought maybe there was some mistake. Maybe Karen was doing some weird cleaning thing, or I don't know. Maybe Tom was rearranging stuff. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. This wasn't some misunderstanding. I walked into the living room, and there was Tom, sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. He didn't look at me at first, didn't say anything either, just sat there in this awkward silence. Karen was nowhere to be found, of course, leaving him to do the dirty work. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel my anger bubbling up. Tom sighed, finally looking up at me with this guilty expression, like he was a little kid who got caught doing something wrong. "Karen, she thinks it's time for you to move out," he said. His voice was so quiet, like he was ashamed of even saying it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious? You're kicking me out just like that? After everything?" He didn't even try to defend himself. He just nodded, looking at the floor. "It's not like that," he mumbled. "It's just, Karen's stressed with the pregnancy, and she feels uncomfortable with you being here. You know, with everything going on." Everything going on? What did that even mean? I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't caused any problems. All I did was live there, help out, and keep to myself as much as possible. And now I was being thrown out because Karen felt uncomfortable. It was such BS, and Tom knew it too, but he wasn't going to stand up to her. I could see that clearly now. "So that's it? You're just throwing me out on the street?" I asked, my voice shaking with frustration. Over some lies Karen's been feeding you? I've done nothing but help around here, Tom. You know that. Tom stood up, running a hand through his hair, still avoiding eye contact. I'm not throwing you on the street, he said. I'll help you find a place. We can cover your security deposit, maybe even the first month's rent. It's not like we're abandoning you. Not abandoning me? It felt like the exact opposite. I wasn't asking for money. I was asking for some respect. For my own brother to have my back instead of just rolling over because his wife wanted me gone. Karen said I was flirting with her, Tom. She said I was hanging out with bad people. You really believe that? I asked, desperate for some kind of acknowledgement that he knew the truth. He didn't answer right away, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. He either believed her, or he was too scared to disagree with her. Either way, I was screwed. Look, he finally said, Karen's been really stressed, and with the baby coming, we just need a little more peace in the house. You've been great, and I appreciate everything you've done, but this is what's best for everyone. What's best for everyone? What about what's best for me? I wanted to scream, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. Karen had made up her mind, and Tom wasn't going to fight her on it. I was being pushed out, and there was nothing I could do to change it. I stood there for a second, trying to process it all. Part of me wanted to just storm out and never look back, but I had nowhere else to go. I didn't have savings for a new place yet, and I definitely didn't have any family I could turn to, at least not after this. Tom was the only one I thought I could count on, and now that bridge was burning right in front of me. When do I have to be out? I asked, my voice flat and defeated. Tom shifted uncomfortably. Karen was hoping by the end of the week, he said, almost like he was ashamed to even say it. The end of the week. That was 4 days away. 4 freaking days to find somewhere to live, pack up my life, and figure out how to survive on my own. Right, I muttered, shaking my head. Thanks for the heads up, I guess. I turned around, heading back to the hallway where all my stuff was piled up. I could feel Tom watching me, but I didn't bother looking back at him. What was the point? He wasn't going to change his mind, and even if he wanted to, Karen wouldn't let him. I started picking up the boxes, dragging them back into my room, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. I spent the next few days frantically searching for apartments, reaching out to anyone I could think of who might be able to let me crash for a while. It wasn't easy. Rent was high, and I didn't have enough saved up yet to afford anything decent. I kept thinking maybe Tom would come to his senses. Maybe he'd talk to Karen and realize how unfair this whole situation was. But every time I saw them together, it was clear that wasn't happening. Karen avoided me completely, barely even acknowledging my existence. And Tom? He was acting like this was all perfectly normal. By the time Friday rolled around, I still hadn't found a place. I was packing the last of my things into boxes, trying not to cry, when Tom knocked on the door. He stood there awkwardly for a minute, holding an envelope in his hand. Here, he said, handing it to me. It's for the security deposit and first month's rent. I hope it helps. I took the envelope without saying anything. I didn't want his money. What I wanted was for my brother to stand up for me, to tell Karen she was wrong, and that I didn't deserve to be treated like this. But that wasn't going to happen, and I knew it. I left that weekend with my boxes and bags, feeling more alone than I ever had before. Tom barely even said goodbye. Karen didn't come out at all. I was just gone, out of their lives like I never mattered in the first place. After getting kicked out of Tom's place, I spent the next few months pretty much in survival mode. I had nowhere to go at first, so I started crashing on friends' couches. You ever feel like you're imposing on people, even when they say it's okay? That's how I felt every single day. I was grateful for my friends letting me stay, but I knew deep down I couldn't keep doing it forever. I was just a guest, and they had their own lives to live. The hardest part was pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I didn't want to keep bringing up what happened with Tom and Karen. I didn't want people to think I was bitter or stuck on it, but truthfully, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It's not like I could just forget that my own brother tossed me out like I was nothing. But whenever someone asked how I was doing, I just smiled and said, I'm figuring things out, like it wasn't killing me inside. Couch surfing was rough. I couldn't settle anywhere, and I was constantly moving around with all my stuff in boxes and bags. There's something weird about living out of boxes for that long. You feel like you're always on the edge of being thrown out again. I'd pack everything up every time I left for work, just in case. It's like I didn't trust that I'd be welcomed back. It messes with your head living like that. I'll admit, things weren't great for a while. My job was okay, but it didn't pay enough for me to get my own place right away. I was trying to save, but you know how it goes. Every time I thought I was making progress, something would come up that wiped out my savings. Car trouble, bills, groceries. It felt like I was stuck, just treading water and trying not to drown. I thought about calling Tom a few times, asking him for help, but then I'd remember how things ended and how easily he let Karen push me out. I couldn't go back to him. I couldn't go back to them. The fact that he never even checked on me after I left? That said everything. I wasn't important to him anymore. I was just another problem Karen solved. It's funny, though. You'd think getting thrown out by my own family would have broken me, but somehow it just made me more determined. I decided I wasn't going to rely on anyone else anymore. I was done with people letting me down, done with feeling like I owed anyone for a roof over my head. If I was going to get back on my feet, I was going to do it myself. So I started working harder, picking up extra hours at my job whenever I could. I cut back on everything. No new clothes, no going out, nothing that wasn't necessary. It was tough, but after a few months, I had enough saved up to finally get my own place. It wasn't anything fancy. Just a small one-room studio apartment on the edge of town, but it was mine. No more bouncing from place to place. No more relying on anyone else. I finally had a place to call my own, and it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I remember the first night in my new apartment. I didn't have much, just a mattress on the floor and a couple of boxes of stuff, but it felt like freedom. It was quiet, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't have to worry about being kicked out. I didn't have to walk on eggshells or tiptoe around anyone's moods. It was just me, and that was enough. Even though I was proud of myself for getting back on my feet, it didn't take away the hurt. I still thought about Tom and Karen all the time. I thought about how easily they tossed me out when they didn't need me anymore. How Karen's lies about me flirting with her and hanging out with sketchy people were enough to convince Tom to kick me out without even giving me a chance to defend myself. It still stung, even if I was doing better. What made it worse was that no one in my family reached out. Not my parents, not my other siblings. It was like I didn't exist anymore. I guess Tom told everyone his side of the story, and I wasn't part of the picture they cared about. My parents always had this thing about keeping the peace, and I'm sure they thought it was easier to let Tom and Karen do whatever they wanted rather than confront them about what happened. But it still hurt, you know? It felt like I'd been erased from their lives, just like that. I focused on moving forward, though. I didn't have time to sit around feeling sorry for myself. I had bills to pay, and the rent wasn't going to take care of itself. So I kept working, kept grinding, and slowly, things started looking up. I got a promotion at work that helped with my finances. I started decorating my little apartment, making it feel like home. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I was proud of how far I'd come. One thing I learned during all this was that you can't depend on anyone else to fix your life. No one's coming to save you, and the people you think will always have your back might be the ones who push you down the hardest. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's the truth. You've got to look out for yourself, because when it all comes crashing down, the only person you can count on is you. Still, despite everything, there was a part of me that wished things had gone differently with Tom. I missed having a brother. I missed the way things used to be before Karen came into the picture and flipped everything upside down. But I knew I couldn't go back to that. I couldn't forget how they treated me, and I wasn't going to let them back into my life after what they did. They made their choice, and I had to live with mine. I hadn't spoken to Tom in almost a year by the time I felt like I was back on my feet. Every now and then, I'd get a text from him or Karen asking how I was doing or checking in, but I never responded. I couldn't. Not after what they put me through. I figured they'd moved on, too. They had their baby by now, and I'm sure their life was just fine without me in it. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. You don't just treat family like that and expect everything to be okay. I didn't know it at the time, but that whole situation was going to come back around eventually. And when it did, it was going to change everything. It had been about a year since I got my own place and went completely no contact with Tom and Karen. I'd done everything I could to put them behind me, but it's not like you can just erase family from your mind. Every now and then, I'd think about reaching out, but then I'd remember how they tossed me out like I was nothing. The thought of Tom believing Karen's lies still made me sick. Then, one day I got a call. I was sitting at my desk, half listening to a podcast when my phone started ringing. I glanced at the screen, and to my surprise, it was Tom. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, so seeing his name pop up gave me a weird feeling. Part of me wanted to ignore it, let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. So I did. "Hello?" I answered, trying to sound neutral, not wanting to show any emotion. There was a pause on the other end, and then Tom's voice came through, sounding different. He didn't sound like the confident, put-together older brother I used to know. He sounded desperate. "Hey," he said. "It's me." Yeah, I knew it was him. "What's up?" I replied, not wanting to make this easy for him. Tom hesitated, then sighed. "Look, I'm just going to cut to the chase. We need help. Karen and we're losing the house. The business went under, and we're getting evicted. We've got nowhere else to go." I could feel my heart rate pick up. I hadn't heard from Tom in over a year, and now he was calling because he needed something? After everything they put me through? It was almost laughable. Part of me wanted to hang up right then and there, let them figure it out on their own. But the other part of me, well, it was complicated. "So, what do you want from me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We were hoping—" He paused, like he didn't even believe what he was about to say. "We were hoping you'd let us stay with you, just for a few months, until we get back on our feet." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mind raced back to that day, coming home to find all my stuff packed in the hallway. The way Tom just stood there while Karen lied about me flirting with her. And now they wanted to stay with me? In my apartment? I let out a short laugh, more out of disbelief than anything. "You've got to be kidding me," I said. "I know how it sounds," Tom replied quickly, like he knew how ridiculous it was. "But we've got 2 kids now. We don't have anywhere else to go. Please, we wouldn't ask if it wasn't an emergency." An emergency. So now I was supposed to forget everything and help them because they were in trouble. Where was that energy when I needed a place to stay? When Karen was throwing me out over lies and Tom just stood by and let it happen? "Tom, I don't know what to tell you," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You kicked me out when I needed help. Remember that? You and Karen didn't care then. Why should I care now?" There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, and for a moment I thought he might hang up. But then he spoke again, and this time his voice was softer, like he was finally starting to get it. "I know," he said. "I know we screwed up. Karen, she was wrong. I was wrong for not standing up for you. I should have never let that happen. I should have had your back." Hearing him admit that gave me a weird mix of satisfaction and anger. It was the apology I had been waiting for, but it also felt too late. Like it didn't matter anymore. The damage was already done. What good was an apology now after all this time? "I needed you, Tom," I said, my voice starting to crack. "I needed my brother, and you let her lie about me. You let her make me out to be some kind of freak like I was flirting with her. You believed her over me." "I know," he whispered. "I'm sorry, I really am. But right now, we're desperate. We don't have anyone else to turn to. I'm asking you, as your brother, please, can we stay with you?" I sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, trying to figure out what to say. A part of me wanted to tell him to shove it, to let him deal with the consequences of his choices. But another part of me, maybe the part that still cared about family, despite everything, was torn. I'd been through hell when they kicked me out. But did that mean I had to kick them when they were down too? Was it my responsibility to be the bigger person here? "I need some time to think about it," I finally said, my voice tight. "I understand," Tom replied, sounding relieved that I hadn't slammed the door in his face just yet. "Take as much time as you need. I'm really sorry for everything, and I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me." After we hung up, I just sat there for a while staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to laugh at the irony of the situation. They threw me out without a second thought, and now they were begging me for a place to stay. It felt like some kind of twisted karmic joke. But the truth was, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be that person who holds grudges forever, but at the same time, I didn't want to be walked all over again. If I let them stay, would it just be another situation where they take advantage of me? Or would this be the moment where we all finally grew up and moved past what happened? I thought about it for days. My phone kept buzzing with texts from Tom, reminding me that they didn't have much time left before they had to move out of their house. My parents even got involved, sending me guilt-trippy messages about how family sticks together and how I should let bygones be bygones. But it wasn't that simple. Family sticking together only works when both sides actually give a damn about each other. And for a long time, it felt like I was the only one who cared. Update 1. I sat with the phone in my hand, staring at it like it was going to give me some kind of magical answer. After days of thinking about it, I had finally called Tom back. He didn't pick up right away, so I left him a message telling him I had made my decision, and that he could call me back whenever he got the chance. Part of me felt like a huge weight had been lifted, but the other part was just anxious. Like, whatever was going to happen next would either be a huge mess or something that changed everything between us for good. I wasn't sure which way it was going to go, but I had to stick with my choice. About an hour later, Tom called me back. His voice sounded tense, like he had been holding his breath since I left the message. "So, what's your decision?" he asked, not even bothering with small talk. I took a deep breath. "Look, Tom, I thought about it a lot," I started, trying to keep calm, even though I felt like my heart was going to pound out of my chest. "And I can't let you and Karen stay with me." There was silence on the other end, like he wasn't sure he heard me right. "Wait, what? You're serious?" he finally said, sounding more shocked than angry. "After everything, you're really going to turn us away?" "After everything?" I shot back, feeling my voice get sharper. "You mean after you kicked me out of your house with no warning, based on lies Karen made up? You threw me out, Tom. I had nowhere to go. So, yeah, I'm serious." I could hear him breathing on the other end, like he was trying to figure out how to respond without blowing up. "I told you I was sorry for that. We were under a lot of stress. Karen was pregnant and things were just complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, my frustration boiling over. "You believed lies about me flirting with your wife and hanging out with drug dealers? You didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. And now, because things are bad for you, I'm supposed to just forget about all that?" "I'm not asking you to forget," Tom said, his voice more desperate now. "I'm asking you to help us. We've got kids now. This isn't just about me or Karen. We're your family." I felt a pang of guilt at that, but I wasn't going to back down, not after everything I'd been through. "Family? You weren't thinking about family when you threw me out. You weren't thinking about family when you let Karen lie about me. I had to figure it out on my own, Tom. Now it's your turn." There was another long pause. I could hear the frustration in his breathing again, but this time he didn't argue. He knew I was right. "Look," I continued, softening my tone just a little, "I'm not saying I don't care, but I can't let you stay with me. I've worked hard to rebuild my life, and I'm finally in a good place. I can't let you and Karen come in and mess that up again. You understand that, right?" "Yeah," Tom muttered. "I get it." It wasn't the answer he wanted, but I wasn't going to budge. I wasn't about to let him guilt-trip me into giving in. I'd come too far for that. "I'll help in other ways," I offered, feeling like I had to throw him something. "I'll help you find resources or places you can stay. But my home? That's off limits." There was a long silence on the other end, and for a second I thought Tom had hung up. But then he sighed, long and deep, like he was finally accepting it. "Okay," he said, his voice quieter now. "I understand. I'm not happy about it, but I understand." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. It wasn't easy telling my own brother no, but I had to protect myself first. If I let him and Karen back into my life like that, I knew things would just end up the same as before, and I couldn't handle that again. "I really do hope things get better for you guys," I said, trying to end the conversation on a less tense note. "I'm sorry things are so hard right now." "Yeah, me too," Tom muttered. "Thanks for whatever help you can give." We said our awkward goodbyes, and that was that. I hung up the phone and just sat there for a minute, processing everything. I had said no. For once in my life, I had stood up for myself against my own family, and it felt weird. Part of me was proud, but another part was sad. I didn't like the idea of being estranged from Tom forever, but I knew this was the right thing to do. I had to draw the line somewhere. Over the next few days, I kept thinking about that conversation, replaying it in my head. I wasn't sure if Tom was mad at me or if he really understood where I was coming from, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let myself be guilted into something I wasn't comfortable with. My parents, of course, found out about the whole thing and tried to jump in with their family sticks together routine. They couldn't believe I said no, even after I explained everything that had happened with Tom and Karen. It's like they just didn't want to see the bigger picture. "You should have helped them," my mom told me during one of our phone calls. "They're struggling, and you've always been the one to help. This isn't like you." That last part stung a bit. Maybe it wasn't like me, but maybe that was the point. I'd always been the one to bend over backward for family, no matter how they treated me. But that's exactly why I had to say no this time. I wasn't the same person I was before. I had grown, learned to set boundaries, and this was one of them. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, trying to stay calm. "But I've got to put myself first for once. Tom and Karen can figure it out." My parents didn't really get it, but that didn't surprise me. They weren't the ones who had been kicked out and left to fend for themselves. They weren't the ones who had to rebuild everything from scratch. I was, and I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel bad for protecting what I'd worked so hard to build. After that, things went quiet for a while. I didn't hear much from Tom or Karen, which was fine with me. They had their own problems to deal with, and I had mine. I helped them find a shelter that could take them in for a while, and that was the last I heard about it. No more desperate calls, no more guilt-tripping texts, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free.